Hey, I'm Orlando Jones, and I just want you to know that the Moana Nui podcast will be starting soon. Stay tuned, yo.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
Hey everybody, Jazzy Van over here. I am here with a beautiful panelist of amazing souls. And today we are going to be talking about trauma bonding and counseling. So welcome to the Moana Nui podcast. And really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Papaola Lokahi. Thank you so much for being an amazing sponsor and for allowing us to do what we do. So before I begin our podcast, I'm going to go ahead and let my beautiful co-hosts go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hey Shay, I think you're muted still. If you're talking, if you sharing.
Every time. We've been doing this since like forever and still can't get the unmute thing to happen when you want it to. Shae Reigns, therapist, full mental alchemist, as I like to call myself sometimes, and I guess registered nerd is where we're going to go with it today. Just here to talk mental health and hopefully encourage our community to get some mental health, that is.
Oh, I thought we were just like, this is a sex positive podcast, everybody. This community needs to get some. If you're into it, aces, you deserve love too. It's all good. That's a strong opener, I think, for just let everyone know what they're getting into, honey. Hi, my loves. I'm J Mark Accento. I am a trauma recovery coach and wellness consultant. So I jump between individual and group coaching in trauma recovery and nervous system retraining, and also corporate and nonprofit consultation, where I help them rebuild the ways in which they interact and engage with their employees to no longer traumatize them and burn them out, and reduce turnover and all that stuff. So if you like what I have to say, hit your girl up. I will gladly work with your organization. And I'm also my brand is the Spiritual Geek, because my whole thing is offering wellness through the lens of pop culture and geekiness. So happy to be here. Hello. Y'all get some. Anyway.
Thank you guys so much for joining. So today we are going to talk about this very deep and very secretive conversation about trauma bonding. So trauma bonding, by definition, is a connection between an abusive person and the person being abused. So when people hear that, they have this takeaway of like denial that either they are the abuser or that they are being abused. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about 7 different stages that happens during trauma bonding, and you guys just come on and chime in. So there is gaslighting, which is where people will take what you say and they flip it to where it's your problem. If you tell somebody, oh, well, that made me uncomfortable, then they make it sound like you're uncomfortable because of your own problem, not because of the wrong they did. So it changes the narrative and makes you feel like you're not mentally sane. Then you have love bombing. Love bombing comes in such a form that people feel, especially the abused, when they are love bombed, this is where they really do have like the in-depth connection. This is where sex comes in. This is where doting comes in. This is where extravagant gifts or grand gestures come in. And it makes that person feel like, oh, wait a minute, there's the person that I'm in the relationship with. Awesome. And that's why it's called love bombing, because it's not there to stick. It's a show. And then you have emotional addiction, criticism, which abuser criticizes, and then abused criticizes within, listening to what's being said to them. Loss of self is a big one. and it's a very slow transition, but it does happen. And then there goes into the trust dependency and resigning control. So, what do you guys have to say about those 7 stages?
I think isn't there also addiction to the self, to the cycle, right? As one of the stages as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool as in like great job presenting, not cool as in oh trauma bonding is so cool. Abusive cycles are
Right.
so cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna hit with a different angle too, as well. In that I want to take a moment, if y'all are open and consent to it, to remove the language of abuser and abused as noun, as label, and instead in recognition of abusive behavioral patterns and becoming a victim of behavioral patterns. Because
Love that.
what's that saying, right? Nobody thinks they're evil. Nobody thinks they're problematic, right? And I can even see in my own journey of healing and developing and becoming a full-fledged functioning adult and human being, ways in which I have been guilty of engaging with these behavioral patterns, and also guilty of being victim to these behavioral patterns as well. And the reason why I want to bring that to the table is because, when you are living in a state of perpetual trigger, when you are traumatized, your brain will innately put things in boxes as a survival mechanism, right? So, like, I'm leftist as hell and I'm brown and I'm queer and all these things, but if somebody's trying to mug my ass, I don't give a fuck what their pronouns are. In that moment, it doesn't matter. And if I don't take the time to regulate my nervous system after that experience, my life then becomes one where anybody who reminds me of that incident immediately gets put in those boxes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're absolutely, I mean, spot on, because when you have these triggers and you have these moments of that's too familiar, you do put them in boxes, you do put them in categories. And then it does not matter if it's a similarity, but it's not the same. Your mental capacity at the time and your survival mode is going to automatically go, nope, too familiar. That person is this. And it's not even the same thing. And it really does hinder you from being able to process the moving forward. And thank you for your transparency, because there's a lot of people, including myself, that's been through domestic violence, and I was in a survival mode. And then when you come out of survival mode, what it is it's not just ending survival mode, it is healing and learning and unlearning the things that happened in survival mode. Survival mode is survival mode. It's not your personality. And a lot of people get really stuck on, well, I had to do this because I've been through this. Okay, but let's
Not
see
even,
if
I would
we
even
can
say,
pull
not
that.
even but, yes, and, right?
Yeah,
Yes, and I mean, live your life like improv, baby. Yes, and all the way. But like the biggest thing too is that your nervous system, free from your control, will try to become comfortable with the experiences of your abuse by normalizing those behavioral patterns. Why
right.
did I engage in love bombing? Why did I engage in gaslighting? Why did I engage in trust and dependency? Because my abusive relationship, that's what I went through.
Yep.
I didn't know what safety and security felt like. So when I went from my abusive relationship to being with my partner, who we've now been together for 8 years, I thought love was love bombing, right? I thought
Yes.
whenever my partner was pointing out something I did that was genuinely wrong, that they were gaslighting me because I had just gotten out of a relationship where I was gaslit constantly. So I
Yes.
didn't know how to take radical responsibility and radical accountability for myself because I was still living in that space of unsafety. Same thing goes
Yes.
for criticism. Because I was constantly criticized in my previous relationship, when my partner would bring up very valid concerns and very valid criticisms about my behavioral patterns, I was like, oh, well, this is exactly like my ex. And that's why I'm always hesitant in my work professionally to immediately, because we see it on social media all the time, right? Like, are you with a narcissist? They're a narcissist, dump them. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about narcissistic behavioral tendencies. How do people get there? When you're living with trauma, when you're living with CPTSD, you're going to be narcissistic because you're like, I need to survive, me, self, 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 self. But if we say that person's like that, they'll never change. In some, if you can take the esoteric realm, you can take the collective perspective of it, we're also saying I'm incapable of changing. Because either change is the constant law of the universe or it isn't. It can't be one or the other.
I want to jump in here.
Yes,
First of all,
please.
I know I was joking backstage, but all of that, yeah,
Bless.
all of that. I want to kind of jump on the narcissistic part because a lot of people have attached themselves, and we've talked narcissists before on this show. A lot of people like to jump on that terminology to a point where I've spoken to people and they're just like, well, I didn't even know that was a real thing. I just thought it was something that people say. And so it's really important to understand that there's a difference between someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder and someone who has narcissistic tendencies. Being self protective does not make you a narcissist. So when you say, I have to protect myself, I'm identifying these things in myself, so forth and so on, that's not you being a narcissist. That's you being self protective. There's a huge difference between the two. And I don't want to have our viewers conflating those two as most of the world tends to, because that's not fair to the actual narcissists out there. I talk about, or I've spoken about, how that is not my crowd. It's just not. That is not the set of people that I can treat, because to a certain extent you have to know that when you're talking to a narcissist, you have to in some ways talk in circles and be somewhat indirect in order for it to get past the false narrative that they're working with. Narcissism is a personality disorder that is actually based in deep and severe insecurity. This is not a lot of confidence that we're actually seeing when we're looking at someone who actually has a personality disorder. This is actually a deep insecurity that they are trying to mask socially with overt and over the top displays of security that are all lies.
Yes.
On the inside, their inner voices are just like, I hope they believe me. I don't even believe me. It's
Yes.
like constant trying to reaffirm and constantly looking for affirmation and validation and proof that they're awesome because somebody in their history or something in their biology says that they're not awesome enough. And so they have to constantly be trying to convince the world that they actually are when they don't feel that they are. So
Absolutely.
it's really important
Absolutely.
to make sure I jump on that real quick, because I don't appreciate you calling yourself a narcissist when you're just trying to be self-protected.
Right. And
So
like, well, and like the thing of it for me too is that, have I encountered a narcissistic behavioral person? Absolutely. At the same time, knowing, like I've had conversations with very close people to me, and throughout a lot of the leaving that relationship and whatnot, there was a lot of, well, why can't you hate him? Why can't you be angry with him? Why can't you be this way with him? And all I can say to them is, there is an unhealed version of himself that he needs to heal from, that I thought I could love out of.
Mm.
And because
Oh.
of that, I can acknowledge where I had my accountability. Because yes, trauma bonding is real and it does happen over time. Sometimes it happens quick, sometimes it happens longevity, and you do get addicted. You get addicted. I was very addicted to the love bombing. If I'm going to be completely transparent, the love bombing is what kept me there. That's what kept me there, because those moments of intense, extreme, extravagant affection or showing of anything, I clung on to that as if that was what my goal was when the cycle looped back around to chaos. And then when it was in chaos, that is where I was internally criticizing myself, listening to things that were said to me, and then taking them with the gaslighting and everything else. I sat there and went, okay, maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. And then since I've been gone and I've been through my healing journey, I can sit here and go, I can acknowledge that I didn't leave like I should have or when I should have. I can acknowledge that I myself had my own insecurities, which is what kept me thinking I had control of loving somebody out of their hurts.
Mm.
And That is the biggest thing that somebody with a narcissistic behavior or personality does, because they lost that control during a traumatic or impactful event. The only way to control their environment is to create it out of what they think they want. And that is always ever changing. So when I talk to people about shadow working or working with their traumas, I remind them that we need to look at those impactful moments, those traumatic moments, whether how small or big we created in our minds for them to be now. They create a little wave throughout time till where we are now that gives us our triggers, gives us our positions. It's, if it's not healed, it snowballs.
In this moment, I just want to, by any chance, do you have a, a definition of just trauma?
Not on hand.
It's okay, not a big deal. We're gonna Google it together right now. And the reason why, it just hit me that we probably should define just regular old trauma,
Oh,
because a lot of
I can
people.
define it because
Oh,
this is what I
please,
do.
thank you.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
It's so
So
important. Thanks.
the thing about trauma too, I think people need to recognize, because this is often not what is said. And this world of accessibility to mental health and mental well-being is such a double-edged sword, right? We have what we are in a world full of what I like to call well-educated traumatized pundits, where people are very good at like quoting shit and googling stuff, and they're like, here's what Brene Brown said, or here's what Gabor Mate, Deepak Chopra said. But then you look at their lives like, you a mess, honey. Like, hold on. Like, you talking the talk, you ain't walking the walk, right? So I'm speaking of quoting, Dr. Gabor Mate, who's if any of you are familiar with his work, is absolutely brilliant. Literally was born during the Holocaust and has like defined his entire life. But he defines trauma is not what happens to you, it is what happens within you as a result of what happens to you. And to add a layer of what I do as a trauma specialist, trauma innately is that which places your nervous system in a state of perpetual reactivity. That the difference between quote unquote somebody who is like, let's say, being very giving as opposed to somebody who is love bombing. A giving partner is doing it from a space of responsiveness. A love bombing partner is doing it from a space of reactivity. The giving person's like, hey, I'm here to give this to you. I'm here because I care about you, because I love you, because I adore you, and I expect nothing back, including validation for my giving this to you. A love bombing person saying, hey, I'm giving this to you, so this proves I'm not a piece of shit, and this proves that you're going to stay with me, and this proves that we're okay. That's completely reactive, right?
And
It's a
you
difference.
better acknowledge it for the
You
world
better
to
acknowledge it. Exactly
yes,
that. And
yes.
the biggest difference is that when you are not living with trauma, you're not just responsible, you are responsible. You are able to be responsive, right? So I'm gonna shout out, Queen Reigns here, because reigning queendom. Um, when I say I was exhibiting narcissistic tendencies, I perceive narcissistic tendencies in relation to how we interact with other people. So for me, I was being self protective, but the impact it was making on my partner during those periods was harmful, was something that could be perceived as narcissistic. Because, like, yeah, I'm being self protective, but I was still, giving them gifts in hopes that they'd stay with me. I was still like, well, no, you're the one saying some shit, because I was so dissociated. I was so unaware of my own behaviors, because when you're in reactivity, you are dissociated. You're not in the body. You're not conscious of the decisions you're making or things that you're doing, that I was causing harm. And so, one of the things that you just said, Jazzy, that I adore, by the way, is I could not love them through their trauma. And because we're all like on the healing journey girlies here, I think one of the dangers, and those of you who are watching her on your own journey need to be really cognitive and conscious of, is there is a big difference between understanding and being complacent, right? So if I were to run into my abusive ex today, I am incredibly compassionate and understanding of the fact that the reason why they treated me that way, I've met their parents. I know why they act the way they do. But that doesn't mean, unless they like come up to me and they're like, hey, this was all terrible. I'm working on it. I'm taking accountability. I don't need to go out of my way to meet with them. The most compassionate thing that you can do in a partnership, even if it's an abusive dynamic, is love yourself and love them enough to say you do not consent to them being the very worst parts of themselves. In that, it's
Yes.
not avoidant. In that,
Yes.
it's not punishment. In that, it's not reactive. It is, hey, I know you can be the best you can be because when our relationship started, you were that best version of yourself because all the bullshit dropped for like a hot minute or a few months. But now your nervous system is getting activated again. You're exhibiting avoidant tendencies. You're exhibiting anxious tendencies. You're exhibiting narcissistic tendencies. I don't have to consent to that. I'm not saying you're a piece of shit, but if I am an active participant in your self destructive behavior, that means I'm consenting to you living in your trauma body. And so,
Love
me breaking up with you, me leaving you, me ending this, it's not a punishment of you. It's me acknowledging that you can be better than this and I don't have to participate in you being this version of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. Because I will 100% vouch that that is exactly how things can go when you sit there and go, this is not about you. This is about me. And I have to take control of myself because that's one thing I tell my clients all the time. No one is in control of any other person. I am a mom. I'm a wife. I don't control my own children. I mean, they're not like crazy heathens, but name a kid that's not a little wild. And I have a husband. I don't control a single soul. I know that the only thing I control is my thoughts, my words, my actions, and that's it. It's me. So when you are coming into this recognition of this trauma bond or this abusive relationship or whatever is, whatever it falls into, one, the recognition is definitely a very powerful move, and you might see it in little bits here and there. But when you start recognizing it, definitely listen to your instincts, listen to yourself, because that is the whisper that you've been shoving in the back for way too long. And then when you can sit there and acknowledge, this is about what I need to do because this is not healthy for me, like you said, it's not about saying you're the asshole. I got to go because this isn't for me. It's about, no, I have to go because I need to do what's best for me and because I'm not enabling what you've been doing to me anymore. Because sometimes we forget that, as I again acknowledged and can admit, that was an accountability and a responsibility for me to go ahead and take that and go, I enabled these actions and this behavior, and that's on me for enabling it. It's not on me for the initial action being casted upon, but it is my acknowledgement and my responsibility to say, yeah, I enabled. Yeah, I covered up stories. Yeah, I hid what was really going on to keep a face.
And so that's also a really good place to put this next bit when it comes to trauma bonding, because usually what happens, no, let me be even more fair. Sometimes what's happening is what you're actually seeing is the evidence of someone else's trauma. You're like he said, yo, I met your parents. I understand where you're coming from, right? I can see that was a thing. So we can recognize that someone else had things or had reactions to things that were happening to them. We can acknowledge all of those things, and we can also acknowledge the things that happen to us, the things that we experience, the things that we are reacting to. And that is the thing about relationships, period. Whether it has to do with trauma bonding or not, it takes, let me be inclusive, all persons in the relationship, whether it's one, two, or five, whatever your dynamic is, um, it takes all persons to recognize that each individual has their own set of experiences that probably includes traumas that they haven't actually had a chance to even recognize are traumas, right? And that's why I wanted to make sure that we just define trauma, because a lot of people don't even know. Wait, was that trauma? Am I traumatized? Do I actually have trauma? Because I thought I had a great childhood. I mean, there was just that little bit of molestation going on, but good childhood. And
Yep.
I see you shaking your head, but I
Oh
have
no, I'm agreeing
actually
with you,
had to speak to people um,
yes.
who were trafficked, sold to people by their parents,
Yep.
thinking that this is a normal thing, not knowing that they were sex trafficked,
Yeah.
not knowing that they were a child bride, not knowing that having to service daddy was not a part of your job as the oldest daughter. I've had to counsel people through the messaging of you were the wild child, and now they're an adult and recognizing, oh, you mean I don't still have to be that. I don't have to accept that label, right? And then they go out and they play out these labels, they play out these experiences, they play out these agreements that they had throughout their lives, not knowing that this was traumatizing. These are experiences that you went through that you are now carrying into your grown up person relationships, not knowing why it is that you're having a hard time making a friend because you don't actually know what the definition of a friend is without having to love bomb, without having to potentially perform sexual favors and things like that, without actually knowing that just being a friend means you show up.
Mhm.
Like
Can
that's
Absolutely.
I
it's kind
can
of
I add
scary.
on that too?
For
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, so of course you're talking about sexual trauma, which is of course very real. And I think one of the distinctive factors that people need to understand is what Shay is referring to as big T trauma. This is the thing that most people usually associate with being traumatized, right? Abusive relationships, sexual trauma, divorce, violence, war, all those things. But the reality of it is there's also little t or small t traumas. Those little t traumas usually happening during your development of your life are those experiences in which you sacrifice authentic expression for attachment. And we're all people of color, so I'm sure we're familiar with those vibes of like, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about, right? Stop laughing too loud, you're being annoying, you're acting a fool in the store. What do you have to be mad about? You don't know what it is to be mad. You don't know what it is to struggle. Those things are small t traumatic events because as a kid in our development, as our brains are developing, we can't consciously be like, I need to be authentic. No, our nervous system will always choose attachment. And so when you grow up in an environment that tells you to sacrifice authentic expression, and I'm not just talking about like emo's not a phase, mom. I mean like just authentic emotional expression. You become an adult that is emotionally immature. You become an adult that is
Authentic,
emotionally
I'm sorry, just gonna
dysregulated.
jump in real quick. Authentic emotional expression is as simple as what you just said hurt my feelings,
Yes, a
where
thousand
you're
percent.
not allowed to just authentically say, hey, mom, the fact that you can't ever admit that you did something wrong
Yes.
makes it difficult for me to understand
Mhm.
the difference between wrong and
And
right.
I love that you guys are bringing this up because there are some folks that will hear me talk to my kids and they're just like, Jazzy, did your kiddo just say like, "Hey mom, what you said hurt my feelings," and like you're actually explaining yourself? And I said, I'm not explaining myself. I am allowing them to tell me how they perceived what I said and how it made them feel. So then I can sit there and go, "Whoa, let me try again because that was not what I meant. That is not what I meant to say. That is not the intention. Let me go ahead and reword this." And I've actually had my daughter sit there and go, "Well, why didn't you word it like that the first time?" I'm like, because I keep forgetting that you are my kiddo and that you're like, even though I raised you and you've been a part of my life for all these years, your understanding of certain words are still going to be different than mine. We can understand the basic verbiage, the basic definition, but we're not going to have the same perception of that word because our perceptions are based on our experiences.
Mhm.
So when she comes to me and says, or whenever my sons come up to me and say, "Mom, did you mean this?" Like we went from, "Hey, you hurt my feelings," to, "Hey mom, um I just want to make sure we're clear. Did you mean this when you said that, or did you mean something different?" And then sometimes I'll be like, "Yes, this is exactly what I meant. Are you understanding why I said it and what led to this? And can we have a conversation?" Or they'll sit there and go, "Now I don't understand." And then I'll go, "Okay, let me try a different way. Like, let's dig into your perception. Let mommy get out of mom mode and you come to me from your perception and we can go from there. And the only reason why I do that is because I did not have that as a kid. And it's not because my mom was a bad mother. She was an amazing mother. And there was just a lot of things going on. You know, I have a biological father that chose some addictions and whatnot over our family. So my mother, young, raising kids, had a lot on her plate and a lot of trauma happening to her with her experiences. So there was a lot of influence from other family, from environments, from even just community that showed me that I had to be the good kid, the kid that couldn't say anything that upset me because you're supposed to be strong for your mommy. You're supposed to be the good kid. Help with these. Do this, do that. And yes, when I became an adult, I sat in an empty barracks room going, where's the noise? It's too quiet. Being alone was scary. So I ended up creating an emotional attachment to collective. I needed to have a connection with at least one person, and it would be a little ridiculous, to be honest. You know, like to be honest, it was just too much. And as you grow and as you learn, you start realizing that it's not about the blame game. It is about self discovery and self journeying through your healing process. Because you can blame everything and everybody for every single thing of your life, but that always will correlate to you're the victim of something. In order to empower yourself, you have to let go of the blame, take your responsibility and accountability, and then flourish from there and allow yourself to grow from there.
That speaks volumes too of how people end up in trauma bonding situations once, twice, numerous, multiple times. I'm going to say something, and I'm going to offer a pause, and that some of you watching might feel activated by what I'm about to say, because it's going to sound like, what the hell are you talking about? But I want you to hear me out, right? Um, People perpetuate uncomfortable and traumatic cycles because they're so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And I know that sounds crazy, especially if you have an anxiety disorder or depression disorder or type 2 bipolar disorder or any kind of mental health disorders. You're like, what do you mean I'm uncomfortable all the time? What are you talking about? Well, we have to remember that the way it works in Western medicine is they say thoughts predicate feelings. But if you look at Eastern wisdom, they say feelings predicate thoughts. So we're going to take it through this lens here. Because there's such a mind-body disconnection, what happens is you're going through your day, you feel uncomfortable, but you're not conscious of it. And so your brain immediately jumps to creating a reason. I call this creating unnecessary edge fires. So for those of y'all who ever lived on the West Coast in California, edge fires are how they stop wildfires from spreading. They burn fires in a circumference around an area so that the fire can't spread. There's no oxygen. Unnecessary edge fires are you're going out in the world, you suddenly feel uncomfortable, and then you lose your shit in various kinds of ways. You either like, now seems like a good time to start fighting with my partner just for no reason.
Mhm.
You're like, you don't know what's happening.
Let me just spread this gasoline around and
Yeah,
light
let
a
me
match
just
and
do
see what
this.
happens.
And then when shit escalates, your brain reinforces those neural
Like,
pathways and goes, see, I told you there was a fire. And you're like, and there's the disconnect. You're like, how'd that happen? And the reason is until you're able to really sit, right? Like Jazzy was saying, when you were alone, you felt so uncomfortable. And you're like, I can't be alone. I need to end up with anybody, no matter what the cost of that is. Until you're able to really sit and be like, I'm uncomfortable. And that's okay. There's nothing to fix. These sensations are real. The stories that are spinning aren't true. Until you're able to live in that state of like these sensations are real, these stories aren't true, everything becomes a red flag. You're literally looking through the lens through into the world through lenses of red. So like somebody could come totally well-meaning, totally kind, totally loving, but if they activate you, you feel uncomfortable. You don't recognize you're uncomfortable. You're going to be like, well, clearly it's their fault. They're canceled. You know what I mean? So being able to take radical responsibility, and I want to be real with y'all. This doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to go do a silent retreat for 2 weeks. Don't do that. Just give yourself a moment. Like set a little timer on your phone, 1 hour on the hour during the day. So for a 12-hour period, just check in with yourself. How do you feel? Give it a text. Don't even assign an emotion to it, right? Just be like, oh, my chest is tight. Oh, my shoulders are tight. Oh, this feels expansive. Build a familiarity with that. and get so crystal clear, become a fucking Jedi of your body, become so crystal clear of your experiences so that when you're in conversation, and this is literally how my partner and I communicate with each other now, right? When we're in conversation, I suddenly feel activated. I go, hey, um, I don't know if it's something you said or if it's just something happening to me internally. I feel really activated right now and really uncomfortable. So I love you dearly. I need to leave and ground myself because I don't want to say something
I love that.
ungraceful. I
I'm
don't
so
want to
glad
cause
I'm not the only one
problems.
that does that because there are moments that I do too. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. I need to move away from this situation. I need to kind of just come over here. I love you. Don't try to fix it. There's nothing to fix. I need to go figure this out. Hold on a
Yep.
minute. Let me come back. And then when I come back, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, okay, I just had a jazzy moment. It's okay. We're good. Love you. Give me your hand. And then other times I'm like, all right, so this. But that's the point that you're making is that you take that moment to recognize. And I love that you pointed out that it's not about the emotion.
No.
It's registering what you're feeling, whether it's I feel my chest is tight or my chest is feeling like it's open. My head feels like it's going to explode or it feels collapsing or, I have a soreness here because what's really interesting is mental health, even though it's kind of like such a word that's been so saturated, in all reality, mental health does also correlate to your physical body. So your emotional connections has a nerve system within your body and as well as organ connections
Mm-hmm.
to your
Like
body.
feeling nervous and suddenly having to pee,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
getting angry and
Yes.
starting to sweat,
Yes.
Yes.
or starting to cry, or
Yeah.
being really, really happy. And then all of a sudden, it's like, I think I'm about to explode because I can literally hear my blood rushing in my ears. Like people can
Yes.
get so happy that they can hear their own pulses, right?
Mhm.
Because
And
and it's
the
literally
other end of the
because,
spectrum too. Like
huh?
maybe you're not angry, maybe you're just dehydrated, bitch, drink your water. Like it doesn't have to be that deep sometimes.
But people think that when they're feeling a feeling physically, it must mean that something's wrong. And it's like, oh, sometimes it's actually because you have gone so long without feeling the good stuff that your body's like, oh shit, it's about to be on. And so now your blood pressure is rushing, now you're sweating, now it's all wonderful. Or, or it's like everything seems to have gone frozen because now we have trauma and we think that if something good is happening, it must mean that something horrible is about to happen. So
That was a whole journey for me, girl. That right there. Where's the shoe?
we have to,
Where's the other one?
right, we have to freeze in this moment because something bad is going to happen and we have to be ready for it instead of just being able to be in the moment and continue appreciating, hey, this was actually a happy moment. So I love that you guys got to the physical part of it because people, like you said, think mental health is just in the mind. I'm sorry, does your mind not exist in the rest of your body?
Mm, mm.
It isn't. Aren't these things
Wasn't
all
that
connected? Like,
delicious?
do
Okay,
you
Shay.
think that if you put an ice pick in your brain, is your heart going to keep going?
Mm.
Yeah, maybe, but the rest of your body's still not going to work. You will be, a nice little head of cabbage. And for those of us who enjoy plants, yes, cabbages have feelings too, but they can't express those feelings. That's what makes human beings so daggone special and all of the other adjectives that we can use to describe us is that we can actually express and experience the full range of human emotion. Unfortunately, that discomfort that comes in that we were talking about earlier or discussing earlier also comes when you have not had the opportunity to experience those things, when you have not had the liberty to experience those things. Yes, my fellow people of color, that whole thing where if you smile too much, you must be stupid. Or if you smile in the picture, there's something wrong with you. So you got to look angry all the time. You must be weak because you are too happy.
Or
What
the
what you
what's
smiling
that
for?
trend now? I hate it when guys smile. It gives me the ick. I hate it. I hate it when they like things. That gives me the ick. I'm like,
Right. Like, I'm
really?
sorry, what is wrong with you?
Are we just telling people they can't
Who
live
hurt you?
anymore? Like, damn. Who hurt you?
Today
Why
is
did
a
you
good day for
tick?
therapy too. Yes, and you over there talking about we don't want men to have emotions because
I love
that's
a
bitch
man with
made or whatever you want to
emotions.
say. I want all of you to go out and find yourself a nice therapist.
Mm,
I know
Yes.
notice I'm saying find yourself a nice therapist. Don't call me because I might be a little bit too real for you. You're not ready for this level of
Sometimes that straight up
who
honesty
hurt
and
you. We're gonna
bluntness
talk
is
about that today.
necessary.
mm.
Right? It is so important to be able to experience as human beings the full depth of human emotions because when we don't, that's how we end up with people, committing suicide or engaging in what is that like school shootings? I don't think so. Are school shootings even still in style now? No,
Uh,
we go out
the,
into the malls and
they're
we
they're
shoot
they're
up.
always in they're always in style. This is America. What are you talking about? That's just you kidding me?
It's
That's that
but
American chic is a school shooting. You can't if
right.
you're not going to school without your bulletproof backpack, then you're not in
It's
America.
it's
That's
it's
that's
you're
this
not
country we
really
live
Well,
in.
my
it's not
kids did
America.
it in public school. I do
But
it at home.
this is how we end
Bless.
up here
Yeah,
by
it really
stopping people
is.
from experiencing the full depth, the full width, all of the human experiences. Because if you have to be in KSU had a shooting, thank you. Um, if you have to be on guard all the time, you're not allowed to be happy. If you're sad, you're too weak. If you're angry, hi black women, um, keep it to yourself.
Mm.
Your emotions mean nothing. You're too emotional and we don't want you in corporate America. Um, if you're too giggly, hey blonde girls, you must be stupid. If you
Heard that
stand
a
up
lot
for
growing
yourself,
up.
hey every man out there, if you stand up for yourself, you're being too aggressive,
Mm.
right? If you actually say, my female counterpart is being abusive, is being any kind of abrasive or whatever, when it's actually legitimate, and we say, no, you just being a bitch,
Right?
right?
Right.
Every human being has a different kind of level of potential trauma to have experienced,
Absolutely.
mainly because they are being told by the social people or the social environments that they're in that they're not allowed to have those feelings or that those
Right.
feelings aren't valid. And if we
Right.
don't get to a point where we can recognize, no, that shit is valid as fuck, and we are going to discuss it and normalize it, not what created the feelings, but actually expressing them
Mm.
so that we can
And that's
figure out
why
how
we
it
do
is that
what
we
we
can
do.
heal as a social community.
Yes. And I,
If we
honest to
don't talk
goodness, I
about it, we
think,
don't have these conversations like what we're having right now, we
right.
don't get to actually heal as a social community. That's what these
Yes.
conversations are about. That's why
Yes.
when Dana and Moana were like, "Hey Shay, you want to do rain talks?" I'm like, yes. Say no more. Here for it. Because
Yes.
when we get to have these conversations in our circles, in our communities, in our languages or what have you, from our perspectives, we don't have to deal with as much of the, yeah, but you're not really allowed to feel that way.
Mm.
It is so important that we actually get to have these communications, these conversations in our own circles, and that we have them openly. That we have the um, this is a sex positive show, and we're going to talk about condoms and dicks today. If
Right.
we don't have these conversations, we will stay lost.
Yes.
And yes, I'm so signed up for the conversations about dicks and condoms. By the way,
Let's go,
But
BB.
all about it.
Let's do a queer edition. I'm in. Let's
we'll
go.
definitely hit up our boss ladies and see what we can do about that conversation because that's a fun one. So before we wrap up today, I want to ask you guys to go ahead and give me your perspective. So ways that I have written down here of ways to break free, which of course I want you guys to just come on in with it. There is education and recognizing it, focusing on the here and now, making sure you create some distance and some space, finding yourself support, doing healthy self care, being able to make future plans, developing healthy relationships, being kind to yourself, and giving yourself the patience, permission, and time to heal.
Mm. So I have a number one thing to break any trauma cycle, and it's very simple. And because it's very simple, for a lot of people, it's incredibly difficult. Make your wellness and well-being your number one priority. Period. I don't care if you're the CEO of the company. I don't care if you're supporting a family of 12. I don't care if you're the oldest sibling. I don't care if your partner, if you're a caregiver for your partner, which I've done that, right? If your well-being isn't your number one priority, everything else will fall apart. And when you're in a trauma cycle, and remember, trauma cycles don't just have to be abusive relationship, right? When I was a full-time caregiver for my partner for 4 years, we were in a trauma cycle. They weren't abusing me, I was taking care of them, but there was still a lot of reactivity in that experience. Because I was unwilling to make my well-being and wellness my number one priority, because I was in this reactive state of like, what if something happens? What if something goes wrong? Da 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 da. I started deteriorating. So once again, it's going to sound very simple, but it's very difficult because a majority of the people in the world don't know what that looks like. When people hear make your well-being your number one priority, they picture Instagram influencers, right? Go take the bubble bath, go spend $50 at whatever that new hip LA grocery store that's too damn expensive is. I don't remember what its name is, like you something, whatever. But like whatever it is, like that's not it. It's the ability to say yes and like, hey, I know we have to talk about this. I know this is a situation. I need to ground so I can talk about this in a responsive way. I need to be able to have the energy to show up. Hey kids, I know that you really want your parent to go and do some stuff, but can I take some time for me? Can you understand that me needing time for myself isn't because I don't care about you, it's because I deeply care about you that I need to have this time. I need to have this energy. Because the fact of the matter is, so long as you are in trauma cycles in your life, and for many people, it radiates. So it's not just, oh, I'm in a traumatic relationship. It then starts influencing your job. It starts influencing your interpersonal relationships. It starts impacting everything. Until you take that time to make your well being your number one priority, your brain will always come up with excuses and reasons why not. I used to be a shopaholic, right? So one of the arguments my partner and I would have for years before I finally made my well being my number one priority was I don't have the money for therapy. Every time that argument happened, another anime figurine would show up at the door. That timing was crazy. I was like, how, universe, what is happening? Like, I would not have a leg to stand on, but it was years before I was able to be like, you right. And you know what? Now she can walk to a convention without buying everything. It's great. No longer a shopaholic because I worked on the root because I made my well-being my number one priority. So that's the biggest thing. Everything else is just details. Everything else, how to handle breaking a trauma bond, everything else having to do that, those are all just tools, right? Once again, well-educated, traumatized pundits. I know people who are in so many courses who they've done the Ayurveda, they've done the Reiki, they've done mindfulness, they've done somatic work. Their lives are still hot messes because they just switched. They're just like, now I'm not addicted to alcohol anymore. Now I just sign up for a course every 6 months. Great, but are you implementing? Are you embodying? Are you taking the time? Or are you utilizing that as
Ooh,
a way to prove that you're doing okay when you're not? Like I said, it's gonna be edgy, honey. When I say make your well-being your number one priority, I mean step out of the intellectualization and embody that shit. Really embody it. Become so pristine in the way you think, act, and speak, in that it is all oriented towards your wellness. And part of that journey also means taking accountability for the ways in which you were harmful in your survival state. It is. Like while we're victims, we're also abusers, which I know is really hard to hear, but we need to own that and claim it. Because when we're in survival states, we do exhibit certain narcissistic tendencies. We do tend to harm others. And when you're able to take ownership of that, it's no longer personal for the ways people have harmed you. And then you're fucking liberated. And then you're fucking free. Because, like, oh,
yes.
yeah, your trauma is just dumping on me, just like my trauma was dumping on them. Doesn't mean I have to be
Yes.
around you, but I get it now and I'm no longer going to be a victim. So thank you for
Right.
coming to my TED Talk.
Sis.
Ding.
Yes. And I just want to touch really quick on that. So for me, my number one like big saying that I tell people is stop pouring from an empty cup. You can't fill anything if you have nothing to fill. And then when you talked about how when you are coming out of trauma bonding, you to have tendencies of narcissism. Some of that tendencies is also purposely sabotaging. So I just wanted to snip that real quick. Shae, baby, take it.
So tough act to follow, but okay, I got you. No is a complete sentence. No, period, is one of my favorite things to remind people. It goes into the whole making yourself your own priority, right? Mommy, can I? No. But no. Learning how to say no is one of the most liberating, freeing things that you can do for yourself. When you were 2 years old, somewhere between 2 and 4, that was the word that you used to spout for everything. Like, legitimately, everything. Anybody who's ever met a 2 or 3-year-old knows that no is going to be their favorite word. They come out, they wake up. It's like they wake up, hey, good morning, no. 2 and 3-year-olds have the ability to say it, and then somehow we socialize it out of ourselves as if no was actually a 4-letter word, as if no actually meant bitch, which we all say, but that's 5 letters and also a full and complete sentence. Just throwing that out there, okay? But no is a full sentence that you have to relearn when you are in recovery from trauma bonding. Can we get back together? No. Can I call you? No. Can I get some? No. Can we just talk? No. Mom calls you. Whatever happened to? No. Best friend, hey, do you have a minute? No. As long as you are in healing mode and no is what needs to be coming out of your mouth so that you can self-protect, that is what should be coming out of your mouth. No explanations, no justifications, no need to, you know, tiptoe and convolute and come up with 60 different reasons, or what's the name of that show, 30 different reasons why. Like, none of that. No. Go roll yourself up in a blanket on the couch and do nothing if that's what you need to do to help yourself heal. And when somebody calls and's like, hey, what are you doing, you might want to start out with nothing, and then when they're like, you want to go out tonight? No, because this couch burrito moment needs to happen.
Yes.
Go ahead, JD.
Yes.
No, I'm saying you cannot go out and kill tonight.
Right.
Sorry. It is so important to be able to say no, and then get a counselor, get a therapist. Every day that you wake up is a good day for therapy. That's like my other tagline. If you woke up today, it's a good day for therapy. So if you woke up and you are saying no to everything else, please say yes to therapy. Even if you're not ready to actually have the full conversation, just sit there. Some of us actually are more than happy to take your money, just to sit there in silence.
I
But
think you just terrified the shit out of people from therapy with that last
no,
sentence.
No,
no,
she called them out for their accountability. It's either you
sit there in
either
silence.
invest in
That's
yourself
real.
or
That's
not invest
real.
in yourself. I mean,
That's
like,
so
seriously,
real.
Mark, what you and
Oh,
I
I'm
do,
not doubting it. I'm just like I could
right?
feel people being like, "Oh fuck." Yeah.
Well,
And
then
also
that's
like y'all
calling out what's real.
therapy's like speed dating too, y'all. Like you ain't
You
going to
got to
find the
find
right
which
one.
one fits.
Yeah, it's okay to be like this person ain't it. It doesn't mean therapy isn't for you. It just means they're not for you. And that's okay.
It's
Exactly.
like dating.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like dating. That's why I said for y'all churns out there who like to play that other game, I'm not the one for you. You narcissists out there, I am not the one for you. You got some trauma. You want to learn how to have better conversations. You want to make better friends. You want to change your circle. You want to change your life. I'm your girl.
Mm.
But all that other stuff, I'm not the one.
Right.
I'm I am the therapist who will walk into the room with my this, whatever this may be on the day. Um, and I am here to get the work done. And
Yeah.
if the work just so happens to entail you sitting in silence or you telling me about your shoes for the first half hour, I'm okay with that because maybe you're not ready to have the conversation yet.
Mm.
Yes.
You are here to do your work and I'm here to do mine.
Mm.
And
Yes.
for the most part, I can say that every therapist is or counselor is on the same vibe, right?
Absolutely.
We're not here to force you to talk through your issues. You called
Nope.
us. We didn't knock on your door.
Correct.
Thank you. We
Yes,
didn't
her
knock on
crowns are
your door,
always gorgeous.
right? We didn't knock on your door like, "Hey, we saw that you were acting out some trauma stuff. You want a therapist?" That's not what we do. We're not ambulance
Mm.
chasers or trauma chasers.
We are
You
here to
came to
give
us.
them
So
the
if you're not ready
tools
for
for
that,
their
Mhm.
toolboxes and for them to guide, but they have to be accountable for their actions. And that's what I do in my mentorships. I let it be known right out the gate. I can give you the tools. I can give you the guidance. I can hold your hand for a little bit when you need comfort, but you have to do the work because at the end of the day, this is about you being able to stand on your own. I'm
Mm.
here to help get you where you want to go, but you got to put the steps in.
That's
I'm
so
here to
real.
talk
I
myself out of the
usually I usually tell my clients like if I die halfway through this, I need you to be good. That's the goal. Like if I die like a few weeks into us working together, I need you to be good. Like don't get me wrong, mourn me because I'm amazing. Like pour one out for the dead homie. But after that, like I need you to not spiral. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that people when they start engaging with a coach or a therapist, they start they're like, oh, this is my one time I can take care of myself. And that's when it's not effectively working with you. Because if you spiral from losing your therapist, then what have you been doing every other hour of the week outside of that 1 hour you're meeting with them?
looks
That ain't it.
so bad on my report.
That ain't it. That
Codependency.
ain't it.
Like you were saying, it's another thing that you decided to change your avenues of that codependency or that,
Mhm.
that intimate cling. And yeah, it needs to be about self work, it needs to be
Mm,
about self healing. And that's one thing that I really want to make sure our audience today takes away from our conversation is that we can all relate to one another. Does not matter our background, it does not matter what serious or minor traumatic events that we've been through. We've all had something, and the compassion and the kindness, not just outwardly, so that way you can feel like you're a good person, but more than anything, inward, because how you project yourself is truly and deeply a reflection of how you treat yourself. So love yourself, be kind to yourself. So when you walk through this earth, while you are out there in the world, or when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you can confidently say, I'm okay today. Today's going to be an okay day because an okay day is perfectly fine. So I just want to thank the both of you so much for joining us and me and talking with me. Oh my gosh, I'm like so mind blown. I love it. These are the best conversations. Do you guys have any last minute things you want to say? Oh,
There we
Oh,
go.
okay, sure. Sorry, we got a voice from God. Yeah, so hi everyone. Once again, I'm J Mark Exento, trauma recovery coach and wellness consultant. If I said anything today that you're like, ooh, that's the person I want to work with on my wellness journey, feel free to hit a girly up. I'd be more than happy to chat with you, send you resources, talk about how we can work together. Or if you're like, oh, they do wellness consultation, I need to introduce them to my HR director, then please, please shoot me an email. Hit me up. You can find me on all the socials. I'm sure links will be put after this goes out. And I have an event next month on February 10th. It's called Healing Attachments. So it's going beyond simply identifying attachment styles, which I often find a lot of events are just like, these are the attachment styles, and then that's it. It's like, cool, I have more words in my brain. It's actually like, how do we start taking steps to, it's actually a good follow up to this, actually, speaking of trauma bonding. Literally, like if you're like, this was great, I need more, my event is 2 hours long and only $20. So sign up, send the links out, hit your girl with a follow on Instagram. I post wisdom nuggets daily. And final note is if you are queer and want to come to a retreat in the Poconos Mountains in June, there will be an announcement going up on my Instagram this week or next week about my retreat Queer Liberation, which is 5 days and then a bunch of Ligabitiqua gorgeous beings just being in the mountains and doing some deep healing work. It's going to be fantastic. And that's me.
I love that. Thanks, babes.
You can find me on all of the social medias, either searching Shae Reigns, Reigns, or oh crap, me and my socials. Anyway, you can find me on all of the social media as the same thing, which is show me. Sorry, Reign Change. REIGNO change. All one word on all the social medias. Yeah, I don't have any events coming up. I try to show up here in this space on the last Thursday of every month. I'm Moana Nui, and if you have any questions that we cannot speak about in this forum, or any subjects that you want us to talk about in this forum, you can message myself, Dana Moana Nui. I am a real therapist in real life, and so I always show up in that kind of space when I am told that's where I need to be. So aside from joking and cursing and talking about dicks and condoms, I am more than willing to have a real conversation about whatever it is that you're going through. So message me directly for those kinds of situations. Anything else, please. Standing ovation is always for Moana Nui and Dana, our producer, and Moana, our bestie. Thank you guys so much for giving me a platform and giving me folks to actually talk to. That makes it so much easier for me to do the rain talking thing. And I guess we will see you next month. Thanks, everybody.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off, called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, he was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.